The moment the doctor whispered over the phone, "You need to come now, real quick." Sienna's life began collapsing like a dying star. But what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that her mother's final breath would unlock a secret so massive it could destroy marriages, friendships, and entire empires. She raced through the rain that night with her heart cracking open, only to return home and find her husband sipping beer like nothing mattered. 2 weeks later, he divorced her. 3 weeks later, he married her best friend. They thought she was broken. They thought she had nothing left. They thought betrayal would be the end of her. But they had no idea her mother had hidden a fortune so powerful it would shake their world to its knees. No idea that Sienna would inherit an empire worth more than some countries. And absolutely no idea that the woman they threw away was about to become the one person they should have never crossed. What she discovered next would ruin them in ways they never saw coming. Before we continue, tell us what time it is in your location and where you're watching from. Subscribe and get in fully, because you will definitely want more stories like this. Now, let's begin. The glass pitcher slipped from Sienna Hale's hands and shattered across the kitchen tiles the moment her phone buzzed. She didn't even look down at the mess. She sprinted toward the hallway, heart pounding, breath tight. A nurse's voice trembled through the speaker. "Miss Hale, your mother's condition is... You should come now." Sienna didn't remember grabbing her keys. She didn't remember locking the door. She only remembered the rain hammering against her windshield as she sped through Riversong Heights, the wipers barely keeping up. Every red light felt like a personal attack. She whispered, "Hold on, Mom. Please," as if wishing could slow down the inevitable. By the time she burst through the doors of Westbrook Medical Center, she was soaked to the bone. Her shoes squeaked against the linoleum as she ran down the hall, ignoring the security guard calling after her. Her mother's room was at the end, room 407. The door was half open, the lights dimmed. Inside, Dr. Evelyn Hale laid motionless, her breathing shallow, her skin pale like fading parchment. Machines beeped steadily beside her, but each beep felt like a countdown. "Mum," Sienna whispered, rushing to her side. She took her mother's cold hand with trembling fingers. I'm here now." Evelyn's eyes fluttered weakly. "Sienna." Her voice was barely audible under the oxygen mask. "I'm right here. Don't talk, Mum. Save your strength." But Evelyn shook her head, ever so slightly. Her eyes held urgency, a kind she'd never shown before. She reached toward Sienna's wrist with surprising strength and pulled her closer. "Box 12. See," she rasped. "Listen. To me." Sienna froze. "Box? What box?" Her mother's grip tightened. "Don't trust the ones closest to you. Not Lance. Not..." Her breath hitched. "Mum, please don't try to. Promise me," Evelyn whispered, each word costing effort she no longer had. "Promise. You'll open the box. I promise." Sienna swallowed hard. "I promise, Mum." Evelyn's eyes softened. A small, heartbreaking smile flickered across her lips. Then the machine screamed. "No, no, please!" Sienna cried as nurses rushed in. She backed against the wall, her breath choking as they attempted resuscitation. A doctor stepped in, shook his head, and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry. She's gone." The world went silent. Hours later, Sienna walked out of the hospital into the pounding rain. It soaked her hair, her clothes, her skin, but none of it registered. Her ears still rang with her mother's final words. Box 12C. Don't trust the ones closest to you. Not Lance. She wiped her face with trembling hands and forced herself to breathe. She needed support. Someone. Anyone. She reached for her phone and called Lance. He didn't answer. She tried again. Still nothing happened. By the time she reached home, her heart was raw, her head throbbing. She unlocked the door quietly, stepping into the dimly lit living room. Lance Porter sat on the couch, feet on the table, a beer in hand, eyes glued to a basketball game like nothing had happened. He glanced over lazily. "Hey, you're back," Sienna's voice cracked. "She's gone, Lance." "Oh." He took a sip of his beer. "Damn. Sorry, babe." That was it. No hug, no rush to hold her. No, "I'm here. Just sorry, babe." Sienna stood there, stunned, shivering, staring at him as if he were a stranger. "You didn't answer your phone." "I was busy," he shrugged, "and you know hospitals stress me out." She wanted to say something, anything, but the words died on her tongue. Exhaustion hit her like a wave. She walked toward the bedroom, closing the door behind her. Minutes later, her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Janelle Drew. "I heard. I'm so sorry, Si. I'm coming over." Sienna's chest tightened. At least someone cared. 20 minutes later, Janelle knocked softly and stepped in with tearful eyes and open arms. She hugged Sienna tightly. "I'm so sorry. I loved your mum, too." Sienna broke into sobs against her friend's shoulder. She said something weird before she died. Something about a box. Janelle stroked her hair. "She was probably just scared, Si. Don't think too much about it tonight. Just rest, okay?" Sienna nodded weakly, but her mother's warning echoed relentlessly in her mind. Don't trust the ones closest to you. Not Lance. Not... The next morning brought no comfort. The funeral came fast. Too fast. Waves of condolences, flowers, murmured prayers. Sienna stood stiffly beside the casket, numb to everything. Lance stood beside her, looking bored. Janelle cried dramatically, holding Sienna's hand as if performing grief. After the reception, Sienna tried once more to connect with her husband. "Lance, can we talk tonight? I need you right now." He exhaled impatiently. "I actually have something later. Work thing. But maybe after." "A work thing? Today?" "Yeah, babe, it's important. We can talk tomorrow." The way he said it, cold, dismissive, sent a chill through her. Tomorrow never came. 2 weeks after the funeral, Lance stood in the kitchen with his arms crossed and said the words that shattered her remaining strength. "I want a divorce, Sienna." The mug slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. "What?" Her voice cracked. You want a divorce now? After everything?" "We weren't working," he said without emotion. "Haven't been for a while. I think it's best if we go our separate ways." "You think it's best? Now? When I just lost my mother?" He shrugged. "Timing sucks, but dragging this out would be worse." Sienna felt her knees weaken. "Is there someone else?" "No," he said quickly, eyes flicking away for just 1 second, just long enough to confirm the truth. She whispered, "Lance, please don't do this. I've lost enough." He picked up his keys. "I'll come back for my things later. My lawyer will contact you." When he left, the silence swallowed her whole. Her phone buzzed instantly. "Janelle. Hey babe, haven't heard from you today. Want me to come over?" Sienna stared at the screen through tears. Before she could reply, another text came. "You okay?" She typed slowly. "Lance wants a divorce." 5 seconds later. "What? I'm on my way. Don't move." That evening, Janelle held her as she cried again. But something about her friend's hug felt wrong. Forced. Stiff. Sienna brushed it off. She was tired, paranoid, grieving, but her mother's last words kept echoing like a warning bell she didn't yet understand. The following week crawled by with the heaviness of wet cement. Sienna tried to function, eat, sleep, breathe, but grief and confusion wrapped around her like chains. She returned to her office at the marketing agency, sitting at her desk pretending to work while her mind replayed every conversation she'd ever had with Lance and Janelle. She kept asking herself the same question. Had she missed the signs? On Thursday afternoon, she left work early, claiming a migraine. She couldn't stand the fake smiles, the pitying glances. She needed time, she needed answers, and she needed to clear her head. She bought a coffee from a small cafe across the street and sat by the window, watching people walk by. Happy couples, laughing students, families, all of them living normal lives while her world fell apart. She replayed her mother's voice in her mind like a broken recording. Don't trust the ones closest to you. Not Lance. Not. Just then, something caught her eye outside the window. A familiar figure. Lance. And beside him. No, it couldn't be. Janelle. They were walking, close. Too close. Their shoulders touched, as if drawn together magnetically. Janelle said something. Lance laughed, and the sound hit Sienna like a punch. Then, as they waited at the crosswalk, Lance reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Janelle's ear. Sienna froze. Janelle blushed. The light turned green. Instead of walking, Lance grabbed Janelle's waist and pulled her into him, kissing her deeply, hungrily. The cafe fell into a dead silence around Sienna. She couldn't breathe, couldn't blink, couldn't look away. The betrayal wasn't new, it was old enough to feel practiced. Her chest tightened as she stood abruptly, her chair screeching across the floor. Several customers turned to look, but she didn't care. She walked straight out of the cafe and into the street, moving toward them with trembling hands. They didn't see her until she was standing right in front of them. Janelle's face drained of color. Lance's eyes widened. "Sienna," Janelle whispered. "How long?" Sienna asked, her voice too calm, too controlled. Janelle swallowed. It just happened." Sienna's jaw clenched. "After my mother died, or before?" Lance stepped forward, palms up. "Si, listen. Answer the question." Her voice cracked, raw and shaking. "Before or after?" Lance glanced at Janelle helplessly. Janelle looked away. Sienna laughed once, a single sharp sound filled with disbelief and pain. "You two are unbelievable." "Sienna, it's not what you think." Janelle tried again. "You're sleeping with my husband," Sienna snapped. "I think it's exactly what I think." Lance's tone turned defensive. "We didn't plan this. It just happened. We connected. You've been distant for months." "My mother was dying," Sienna shouted, drawing more eyes from the street. They fell silent. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. She shook her head slowly. "I trusted both of you, and you took advantage of the worst moment of my life." Lance looked down, guilt flickering across his face. Janelle opened her mouth to speak, but Sienna held up a hand. "Don't. I don't want excuses. I don't want apologies." She took a step back. "You can have each other. You deserve each other." Then she turned and walked away, feeling their eyes drilling into her back. She kept walking until her legs gave out behind a closed bookstore. She sank to the pavement, pressing her forehead to her knees, and sobbed quietly. For a long time, she stayed like that. When she finally stood, her tears dried on her cheeks. She made a decision. She didn't know what Box 12C contained, but she knew one thing. Her mother warned her for a reason, and she was going to find out why. 2 days later, she drove to Evelyn's small rental home on the outskirts of town. She hadn't been there since the funeral. The house still smelled faintly of lavender and peppermint, her mother's favorite scents. Sienna walked into the bedroom and opened her mother's sewing kit. A small brass key labeled 12C sat inside, just as she remembered. She held it tightly and whispered, "Okay, Mom, I'm listening." The next morning, she walked into Riversong First National Bank, her nerves buzzing. "Good morning," the teller said politely. "How may I help you?" "I need access to safety deposit box 12C, Sienna said, placing the key on the counter. The teller's smile faltered the moment she saw the number. Her eyes flicked to the manager's office. "One moment, please." The manager, a tall man with neatly combed hair, approached with a strange mix of respect and unease. "You must be Miss Hale." He shook her hand gently. "I'm Mr. Crowley. Please come with me." She followed him down a quiet hallway, lined with metallic doors. He stopped at the last row and inserted his master key into box 12C. "You'll use yours now." Her hands trembled as she inserted the key. The box unlocked with a dull click. Inside was a single, thick black ledger and a sealed envelope with her name written in her mother's handwriting. Mr. Crowley bowed his head slightly. "Take all the time you need." In a private viewing room, Sienna opened the envelope first. "My dearest Sienna, if you are reading this, I am gone." Her breath hitched. "There is much you do not know about me. I was not just a doctor. I was born Evelyn Rains, heir to a dynasty built long before you were born. When I turned 24, I walked away from that world. I disagreed with their values, their greed, their cruelty. So I built my own life, and my own wealth." Sienna blinked. "Wealth? But that is not what matters most. The ones closest to you are not always what they seem. I made mistakes with people I trusted. I saw the same shadows forming around you. That is why I created everything in this ledger, for you alone." The ledger contained property deeds, stock ownership records, offshore accounts, and documents linking her mother to multiple powerful companies. At the bottom was a summary. Estimated total value, 3.4 trillion. Sienna's breath stopped. Her mother was a secret trillionaire, and she had inherited everything. Her hands shook violently as she flipped through the pages. The final line of the letter made her chest clench. "Do not tell anyone, Sienna. Not Lance, not Janelle. No one. Reach out to Adrian Vale. He will guide you. And remember, you are stronger than you know." Sienna closed the letter slowly. Everything made sense. Everything except one question. What was she supposed to do now? She exhaled shakily. She needed to meet this Adrian Vale. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Every story we will share is a spark of hope, giving a voice, a future, and a chance to anyone out there who have faced challenges or looked down on one way or the other, all over the world. So, support us by subscribing and turning on the notification bell so you never miss a story that truly matters. And we will want to hear from you. So, drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from and how the story touched you. Together, we are not just watching stories unfold, we are keeping hope of a better tomorrow. Sienna stared at the ledger until the ink blurred. Adrian Vale's name sat at the bottom of a notarized page, Ashford and Vale Trusts, New York. Her pulse thudded with a terrible mixture of dread and relief. Her mother had not left her alone. She called the number the letter listed before she could change her mind. "Ashford and Vale, how may I help you?" a polite voice answered on the third ring. "My name is Sienna Hale," she said. Her voice sounded small. "I'm calling about Evelyn Rains. Adrian Vale, is he available?" "Ms. Hale, Mr. Vale handles private estate matters. I'll transfer you." There was a soft click, then a warmer voice. "Ms. Hale, this is Adrian. I was expecting your call." Sienna felt oddly exposed and strangely steadied by the recognition in his tone. "My mother left me something. She said to find you." Adrian's pause was brief but meaningful. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Yes. She instructed my firm to guide you when the time came. This is complicated, both legally and personally. Will you be able to come to New York to meet in person?" She hesitated, then said, "Yes, I will come." By the time she hung up, she had already bought a plane ticket. The flight blurred under her like a strip of light. She barely slept. For the first time since the world collapsed, a plan took shape in her head. Meet Adrian, understand the ledger, protect the inheritance, and, if her mother was right, uncover why she warned her not to trust Lance and Janelle. Adrian met her in a conference room on the 21st floor of a glass tower that smelled faintly of citrus and old money. He was lean, mid-60s, with a voice that made people listen. He shook her hand with surprising strength. "Ms. Hale, let me be blunt," he said, closing the folder he carried. "Your mother built an empire by being invisible. She used trusts, shell corporations, nominee directors. It's messy by design, but legally, the assets are yours, unquestionably." Sienna let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "So it's mine. All of it?" "All of it," Adrian confirmed. "We've been managing the trusts quietly for years, following her instructions. She created a structure that would step down to you upon her death. She also left detailed notes, how to access accounts, who to trust, and how to hold power without being consumed by it." "Why would she hide this from me?" Sienna asked. "Why not tell me? Why let me grieve thinking we had nothing?" Adrian's eyes softened. "Because she wanted you to grow without the shadow of money. She feared you'd lose a part of yourself if wealth came too early. But she also feared. She saw a pattern in the people around you. She wanted you prepared, not prey." Sienna thought of Lance's vacant sympathy, of Janelle's rehearsed tears, and of Evelyn's last desperate whisper. "Don't trust the ones closest to you. Not Lance. Not." Adrian slid a slim tablet across the table. "We can activate management teams, put protective measures in place, and train you through every step, but you must be discreet. Your mother insisted on discretion. Money, this size, attracts predators." Sienna felt a chill of recognition. "Predators? Like Lance and Janelle?" Adrian didn't answer directly. Instead he asked, "What would you have me prioritize?" Sienna considered. Revenge tasted sweet in the hollow of her chest, but Evelyn's framed letter on her bedside table had taught her something vital. Power without purpose is hollow. She remembered her mother's insistence. Protect your heart. Protect yourself. Protect the estate. Teach me. Show me how to move without being seen. Help me make sure anyone who hurt me can't get close to what's mine. Not through marriage, not through lies." She said the words and felt their weight settle into resolve. Adrian nodded. "We'll start with immediate protections. Freeze any transfers that could be initiated by third parties in your name, audit accounts, and set up an anonymous holding company for assets you want to manage personally. After that, we can discuss strategic interventions." Sienna's fingers tightened on the tablet. "What about Lance? He works at Porter Financial." "That's delicate," Adrian said carefully. "You could expose him publicly, but that risks blowback. Your mother wanted outcomes, not spectacle. If you want restraint with consequence, there are legitimate corporate mechanisms we can use." Sienna's mind flashed to the coffee shop kiss, to the way Lance had told her he wanted a divorce, as if choosing a new takeout place. She imagined him scrambling, not knowing why. She imagined Janelle's face when her job evaporated. She wanted them to feel the consequences of their choices without becoming what they were, vengeful and small. "Do it quietly," she said. "Make their lives a mirror of the choices they made." Adrian allowed a small, approving smile. "Very good. We'll craft measures that expose incompetence and mismanagement at Porter and at the hotel chain Janelle works for. But we'll do it under the cover of corporate governance and performance reviews. Nothing illegal, just leverage." Over the next days, a rhythm formed. Sienna learned to read trust documents, to spot shell companies, to understand board dynamics. Adrian introduced her to a compact team, a forensic accountant named Priya, a corporate lawyer named Marcus, a different Marcus, and a strategist named Elise, who specialized in hospitality turnarounds. They were efficient, discreet, high-functioning. With every meeting, Sienna felt less like a stranger in a life that had been thrust upon her, and more like a woman stepping into armor. She practiced answering journalists' questions in a mirror. She rehearsed a composed public face. She learned the language of balance sheets and mergers. The ledger, once an abstract weight in her hands, transformed into a map, lines that connected to companies, to people, to decisions. She also listened to her own heartbeat. Grief remained. It was a low constant under everything. But beneath it, something fierce and careful took root. Her mother had not merely handed her money. Evelyn had handed her a choice, to be swallowed or to stand. A week after she arrived back in Riversong Heights, Sienna sat in a coffee shop and scrolled through the public filings Adrian had forwarded her. Porter Financial's filings showed no immediate red flags. On paper, Lance's firm was stable. But the truth lived between the lines: over-leveraged accounts, bloated executive compensation, and a heavy reliance on a handful of clients. Porter's model looked fragile to a trained eye. Janelle's hotel chain, Solux, was different. It had expanded rapidly during the pandemic, opening boutique properties without the operational backbone. Rising costs and staffing issues had left several locations bleeding cash. Both companies were vulnerable in ways a determined buyer could exploit. Sienna felt that sharp, cold satisfaction that comes when a plan begins to make sense. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt precise. She called Adrian. "I'm ready to make moves." "What are you thinking?" he asked. "Buy," she said simply. Adrian was quiet for a breath. "It's possible. But invisible acquisitions take time and capital allocation. We will use nominee entities and trusts. We will avoid associating your name. You'll own controlling stakes without a public footprint." Sienna nodded. The ledger had already revealed more than money. It had revealed strategy. She had to work the same way her mother had, quietly, smartly, with patience. "Begin," she said. They began with Porter in small increments, purchasing shares through a shell company structured as an investment subsidiary of one of Evelyn's private trusts. The initial buys were subtle, institutional, unremarkable. Lance, glued to his own life, didn't notice. Months in the story could compress to weeks on the screen. The impression had to be that the wheels were turning, discreetly, inexorably. Meanwhile, Sienna arranged to fund a major initiative in her mother's name, an educational scholarship for first-generation students. It was both sincere and strategic. It established her public benevolence while making the family name untouchable and publicly respected. It also guaranteed headlines when the announcement went out. She scheduled the scholarship announcement for a Wednesday morning 6 weeks from now. As she hung up the phone, her throat tight with focus, she let herself for the first time Imagine a future where she was not defined by loss, but by deliberate choice. Quick pause. If this part has you hooked, go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps the channel a lot, and you won't miss the next twist. Now back to Sienna. Her life settled into a strange, double existence. Daytime meetings with Adrian and his team. Late nights scanning filings and watching Lance's public moves with a predator's calm. She logged every transaction, every shift, like a general studying troop movements. Each small acquisition shifted the balance a fraction. And all the while, the ledger sat on her desk at home, a proof to a mother who had loved her enough to plan both the shield and the battle. 3 weeks later, the first shift hit Lance without warning. He came home late one night, later than usual, and dropped his briefcase on the floor. Sienna barely looked up from the dining table where she was pretending to sort mail. She wasn't ready to reveal herself. Not yet. She needed to gather all the moves before showing her hand. Lance sighed dramatically as he loosened his tie. Rough day. The firm lost a major account, out of nowhere. Clients are getting unpredictable these days. Sienna didn't lift her eyes. Sorry to hear that. He blinked, caught off guard by her calm. She seemed different, stronger, colder. But he brushed it off, assuming her grief was finally turning to numbness. Sienna slipped her mother's ring around her finger under the table and whispered inwardly, "Move quietly." The next day, she sat again with Adrian and Priya in the New York office. Adrian pulled up a portfolio screen. "We've officially reached the threshold," he said. "Through the trust network, you're now the majority shareholder of Porter Financial." She felt a quiet jolt run through her. Not joy, not gloating, just the cold recognition of power settling into place. "What about Solok's hotels?" she asked. Elise answered. "We've secured 51% of their voting shares. That gives us operational control. Any understaffed locations or mismanaged teams will fall under review within 2 weeks." Sienna nodded. "Start with the Riversong location. Find everything. I want facts, not assumptions." "Of course," Elise said. Later that evening, Sienna sat alone in her living room, turning off the lights one by one. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt the weight of her mother's absence pressing harder than ever. Her phone lit up. Janelle. Sienna stared at the name for a long moment before answering. "Hey." "See," Janelle said softly. "I wanted to check in. You've been quiet. I'm worried." Sienna's pulse remained steady. "I've been busy." "With what? You're barely at work." "Life," Sienna replied simply. Janelle hesitated. "Listen. About what happened. Lance and I—" Sienna cut her off. "I don't care about your excuses." There was a long silence. "Sienna, please don't hate me." She almost laughed. "You didn't give me much choice." Janelle's breath hitched. "I miss you." "You miss my silence," Sienna corrected. "And you miss the version of me who didn't know the truth." Janelle had no response. Before hanging up, Sienna said something she meant with her whole chest. "Good luck, Janelle. You'll need it." She ended the call. Janelle stared at her phone as if she'd just spoken to a ghost. The next morning, Sienna received a text from Elise. Audit complete. Riversong Solok's is the worst performing location in the chain. Manager. Janelle Drew. Immediate intervention recommended. Sienna exhaled, slowly. Begin the review process. Elise replied instantly, "Understood." 3 days later, Solok's corporate sent Janelle a formal write-up demanding improvement. Her location had the lowest employee satisfaction scores, highest turnover, and multiple unresolved guest complaints. Janelle's meltdown was instant. She called Lance from her office bathroom, sobbing. "They're targeting me. I don't understand. I've been working so hard." Lance, stressed from his own issues, snapped. "Babe, I'm dealing with worse. Half my accounts are frozen for review. I might lose my position." "That's not my fault." Lance rubbed his temples. "I can't deal with this right now." And just like that, they hung up on each other. Sienna watched it all unfold like a distant storm she had predicted weeks before. 4 days later, she received a notice from Elise. Janelle failed her response review. Recommendation, termination within the week. Sienna closed her eyes. She wasn't cruel enough to enjoy it, but she wasn't gentle enough to regret it. Meanwhile, Porter Financial suffered another blow. A large client withdrew their accounts after a due diligence note, originating from Sienna's shell company, exposed gaps in Lance's oversight. The board called an emergency meeting. Lance wasn't invited. That night, Sienna sat on her balcony, sipping tea. The city lights shimmered below her. Her phone buzzed. "Lance, we need to talk." Sienna stared at the message for several seconds before typing. "Why?" Lance didn't expect that. He called immediately. "Sienna," he said when she answered, "things are falling apart. I don't know what's happening. Clients are leaving. My promotion's frozen. Someone filed a performance review on me. Me. I've been with the firm for 6 years. None of this makes sense." Sienna's tone was steady. "Why are you telling me?" Lance stuttered, "because you're my wife." "Ex-wife," she corrected. He swallowed. "We're not divorced yet." "You made your choice." "I didn't think we'd end up like this. I didn't know things would go wrong." Sienna closed her eyes and thought of her mother, of the warning, of the ledger. "Lance," she said softly, "your life isn't falling apart because of me. It's falling apart because of you." He didn't respond. The next day, she received a text from Adrian. "Are you ready for the public phase?" Sienna took a long breath and typed back, "Yes. Let's proceed." The following Wednesday morning, the news exploded. Evelyn Rain's daughter donates $75 million to student says I'm proud to honor my mother's legacy. Photos of Sienna, professional, elegant, composed, flooded every major outlet. Reporters dug into the Rains family history. They connected Evelyn's name to silent trusts, property acquisitions, philanthropic endeavors. Within 6 hours, Sienna Hale went from invisible to an emerging public figure. Lance saw it first, on the TV at his office. He choked on his coffee. Sienna's name, Sienna's face, Sienna's fortune. His co-workers stared at him as his mouth hung open. "Isn't that your ex?" someone asked. Lance stood, pale. I didn't know." He ran outside and called Janelle. She answered on the 3rd ring, sounding exhausted. "What now, Lance?" "Did you see the news?" "What news?" "Sienna, she's a billionaire. Maybe more. Janelle, I think. I think she inherited some massive estate." Janelle's breathing stuttered. "Are you kidding?" Lance whispered, horrified. "We walked away from a fortune." Janelle's voice cracked. "Oh my God." They both stood in stunned silence, finally understanding the magnitude of their loss. Meanwhile, Sienna prepared for her first public appearance, a charity gala downtown. Her transformation was undeniable. She walked in, wearing a simple black gown, hair pinned elegantly, confidence radiating from her like light. People whispered her name as she passed. She wasn't the woman who cried behind bookstores anymore. She was power dressed in grace, and she knew exactly who she wanted to speak to before the night ended. A few minutes past 8, she spotted them. Lance and Janelle, standing near the bar, pale and trembling. They had no idea the confrontation would be the least painful part of what awaited them. Sienna didn't approach them immediately. She wanted them to feel the moment, really feel it. The kind of dread that creeps slowly, climbs the spine, and settles behind the ribs like a cold weight. She walked toward the bar with deliberate calm, stopping only when Lance turned and saw her. His face drained instantly. "Sienna!" People nearby hushed their conversations. Heads tilted, whispers trickled around them like a light breeze. "Is that her? The Rains heiress?" Sienna ignored the stares, her eyes locked only on the two people who broke her. Janelle tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "Sienna, you look amazing." "Thank you," she replied, her voice polite but sharp as glass. Lance stepped forward, hands shaking. "Sienna, listen, we didn't know. If you had known," she finished for him, "you wouldn't have left." Both froze. Sienna tilted her head, studying them. "Do you know what the sad part is? You didn't leave because you were unhappy. You left because you thought I had nothing left to offer." Janelle swallowed hard. It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that," Sienna corrected calmly. "Because everything you wanted from me died with my mother, and you didn't bother waiting to see if I'd survive it." Lance's voice cracked. "I made a mistake." "No," Sienna replied softly. "You made a choice." Janelle wiped her eyes. "Sienna, please. Can we talk privately? Everything is falling apart. My job, my relationship, everything. I didn't mean to." Sienna cut her off. "You meant every minute you spent with my husband." Tears streamed down Janelle's face. Sienna continued, her voice steady. "My mother warned me that the people closest to me would show their true colors when she was gone. I didn't want to believe her. But she was right." A single tear rolled down her cheek before she caught it with her fingertip, refusing to give them more. Lance's voice broke completely. "We didn't know you came from money, Sienna. If we had..." And that was his biggest mistake. She stepped closer, her eyes cold and unblinking. "Exactly. You didn't know. And that's why you left. You didn't love me. You loved what you thought I could do for you. And when grief made me inconvenient, you threw me away." Janelle sobbed openly, clutching her hands together. "Say, I'm sorry, I swear I'm sorry." Sienna gave her a small, almost compassionate smile. "I know you are." For 1 second, Janelle's face lit with hope. Then Sienna added, "But that won't change anything." She stepped back, lifting her chin. "Enjoy the gala. I hope the hors d'oeuvres are good. It's the closest you'll ever get to this world again." She turned and walked away before they could react. The entire ballroom watched. Some whispered admiration, others whispered gratitude. People loved poetic justice, especially when it came wrapped in quiet grace. Sienna didn't look back once. Outside on the balcony, she finally inhaled fully, letting the cold night air clear her lungs. Her heart throbbed. But it wasn't the pain of betrayal anymore. It was something steadier, grounded, resolved. Adrian appeared beside her, giving her a respectful nod. "You handled that with dignity." "It wasn't about dignity," she said softly. "It was about closure." He joined her in looking over the city lights. "Your mother would be proud." Sienna blinked back a burn behind her eyes. "I hope so." The next weeks unfolded with a calm inevitability. Janelle was officially terminated from Solux. The internal audit exposed months of negligence she'd been too distracted, or too arrogant, to fix. Word spread through the local hospitality industry quickly. No hotel wanted to hire someone fired for leadership failure. Her savings dwindled. Her friends avoided her. The engagement ring Lance had given her ended up on a pawn shop shelf for a fraction of its cost. Lance didn't fare better. Porter Financial, underwent mandatory restructuring. His own firm, for the first time in 6 years, listed him as a low performer. His accounts were reassigned. His title was reduced. His office view downgraded to a supply closet they pretended was a workspace. The board eventually voted to terminate him. The day he cleaned out his desk, he slid into his car and stared at the steering wheel, shaking with disbelief. "What did I do?" he whispered. But Sienna didn't cause his downfall. He did. She merely let gravity do its job. Sienna's name, meanwhile, climbed through philanthropic rankings. She launched more scholarships, more community initiatives, more support for struggling medical centers in memory of Evelyn. She didn't flaunt her wealth. She didn't buy flashy cars or diamond watches. Her power remained exactly where it was meant to be: quiet, steady, protective. Months later, she signed the final documents, transferring several properties into a new foundationed branch. After the meeting, she drove to her mother's favorite overlook, the hill with the city view. She sat on a bench and opened the framed letter she carried with her everywhere. Evelyn's handwriting glowed softly in the evening light. "When life tests you, remember who you are. When power finds you, decide who you become. You are stronger than you know." Sienna exhaled. This time, the ache in her chest was softer, almost warm. She whispered into the wind, "I made it, Mom." Her phone buzzed with dozens of notifications, but she ignored them. She looked at the horizon, where the sky melted into gold, thinking of everything she lost and everything she gained. She wasn't defined by betrayal. She wasn't defined by wealth. She wasn't defined by Lance or Janelle or loss. She was defined by choice. She stood slowly, taking one last look at the city before walking back to her car. Her story, finally, was hers alone. And she was just getting started to rule her world. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story like this one. Your support means everything. Thank you for watching until the end. Until the next story. Stay strong, stay hopeful, stay inspired,